on behalf of the Green Party to oppose this out-of-touch bill that fundamentally shows the government's lack of understanding of what's actually happening in the real world. When we talk to everyday New Zealanders, there's a sense that they're conveying to me, and that's a sense that I'm sharing, is that New Zealand seems to be unraveling at the seams. Unemployment is at record high, the cost of living is spiraling out of control, with a recent report actually that a quarter of New Zealanders sometimes or often go without meals. That's a scandal in a country as prosperous as New Zealand, that a quarter of New Zealanders sometimes or often go without meals. We know that the public services that everyday New Zealanders are relying on are getting worse thanks to the government cuts. We've all heard of doctors having to do admin work or janitorial work just to keep the lights running. We've heard, and this is a manifestation, this bill is a manifestation of how this government seems to be doubling down on their agenda of prioritizing private profit over public good. We can see it in the wider government actions, but we can also say in this bill, why is the government prioritizing repealing a bill that enabled a wider variety of New Zealanders to participate in interacting with government, that made legislation into things that the public service more accessible? Now, when the original bill was brought before the House, and I acknowledge, the member Rachel Boyack, and that this was her member's bill, the original bill was supported by a wide variety of organizations. It was supported by disabled and disability advocacy groups such as Blind and Low Vision New Zealand. It was supported by Deaf Action New Zealand, and I actually acknowledged their submission, which was a really short submission. It was a very plain language submission, and I think it said something along the lines of "we support this bill," so very in theme. And the National Disabled Students Association, even the Free Speech Union, which is not really an ideologically bedfellow of members on this side of the House, supported it to select committee. We know that the benefits of plain language benefits all New Zealanders. Accessible language benefits New Zealanders with disabilities. Plain language benefits New Zealanders. And look, we shouldn't get into generalizations about the English language skills of New Zealanders. My colleague to my left here, Dr. Lawrence Zunan, is demonstrating that in his skills in the Committee of the Whole House stage, that New Zealanders can actually have a mastery of techniques of English language and rhetoric and oratory. So we shouldn't generalize and say that, that New Zealanders necessarily have poor language skills. But this does help the New Zealanders who actually do struggle with English. And, there's going to be more of them, because one of the things that this government has done is repealed the English language requirement for overseas investors. So, this will actually help all those New Zealanders who are able to come here because they're on investment visas, and it will enable them to access the legislation, which is actually pretty important. And a plain language enables a variety of perspectives that otherwise wouldn't be heard. For my sins, I'm one of those overly educated New Zealanders. I've got an honours degree and a master's degree, and I'm working on a second one. But I don't think government should just be for people with too many university degrees. And I think using plain language enables more New Zealanders to access that. But who does this repeal actually benefit? It benefits lobbyists and private interests, because New Zealanders aren't actually because this reduces the ability of New Zealanders to engage and debate every day the stuff that the wider public service and that the governments are doing. Now, one of the interesting things that I've read over the past month was an article on Newsroom, and it went into detail about how this government had slow-walked the lobbying reform that the previous government was working on. And I'll just read here a quote. "It seems like a way of killing off a reform workstream without actually getting the bad publicity for having done so, just by kind of freezing it and going to ground and ghosting everyone on it." That was said by Dr. Bryce Edwards, who was the supervisor for my dissertation. And look, I agree with what he said. It just seems like by slowing down the lobbying reform, we're actually and repealing this bill, which never play language, we're just helping them out. Thank you.
I just want to put it out there. If you rely on simple language, you are not dumb. You can't know everything about everything, okay? Look, I have dyslexia. Sometimes I rely on simple language stuff as well. I don't know all the industry-specific jargon. And sometimes I just need a simplified explanation so I can quickly read it and get on with my day. You're not stupid. This government's being stupid.
Yeah. Thank you so much, Laura. That's so important to say. Thank you so much for saying that.
Yeah.
And just to make things clear to people out there, just because you may not understand it, do not consider the person who is doing it as if they're committing a criminal offence. I remember this back in 2022, we had people who equated to us crowdfunding as us breaking the law. And so that is something in there. If you don't understand, don't also equate it to breaking the law, because as soon as you equivalent, like, that's illegal, you're implying your lack of understanding doesn't mean it's a criminal offence. Or something I've had on there, I've been told apparently I'm standing for council this year, and there is not, and like now, this is something in there, there's a difference between perceived conflict of interest and actual conflict of interest. The reason why I'm not standing for office this year is because I'm running it's in the ballot. And I'm hosting shows. it would be irresponsible if, say, Jack Tame ran for Mayor of Auckland while also hosting the mayoral debate panel against his opponents.
And I'd have to, and I mean, when you look at it this way, that poverty is actually determined by the lack of opportunities that people have access to. And so people are, I guess some people are capitalizing on the fact that people are of lack of opportunities. So this is also out of your spectrum too. You can't, I mean, how are you supposed to thrive in an environment that doesn't give you the opportunities? There's no chance, man. There's no chance. And that's what they rely on. The lack of opportunities for growth of all peoples, especially the disparities or, just our minority communities and groups and peoples.
Yeah, I mean, look, the reality is that if they repeal this, right, and they probably will because, they are who they are, okay, it's just going to revert back to a system where they are no longer required to use simple language, and the government probably do nothing to correct that.
And what happens if you have a problem? If my grandma can't understand, should she go to her local MP, Tim Costley? Or maybe if she don't understand, she should ring up her sister Gwen and go to his, her local MP, Paulo Garcia, when they have problems. It's like, wow, I can picture Auntie Gwen saying this to Paulo negatively about Tim Costley and vice versa. I can see that happening. Because, my grandparents, grandma's 97, Gwen's 95. They're pretty straight shooters on what they talk. They're going to, that's going to be what they're going to do. Yeah.
Good point. Not Bernadette saying it's ableism.
Yeah.
Thanks for watching. Make sure you're subscribed to our Facebook, YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok, News Guide, the Order Paper Podcast. YouTube, Twitch, Instagram, TikTok.